Hey guys. So I wanted to share with you about my spiritual journey. Some of you may have noticed that for a while there, I was posting a lot on this channel. And recently I haven't been posting. I would say I haven't been posting much at all over the course of the past year. And the reason for that is that I've been through a long period of integration. You see, there have been three threads on my so-called spiritual path. There's been an awareness thread, okay, awareness/awakening, an embodiment thread, and an energetic mastery thread. And because I'm me in this world, I really have craved to understand how these three threads are interwoven, how they're related. How is it that some people have these very strong energies, strong fields, but don't appear to have a lot of clarity, while others have a lot of clarity but don't have very strong fields? How does that work? I wondered. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to introduce a new channel, a new YouTube channel, where I'm going to talk about how these three threads relate: awakening, embodiment, and energetic mastery. I'm going to speak about this through the lens of my own experience and integration process. And so before I begin with this introduction, just note that whatever I say is a unique expression of this Woodley character in this life. It has to be. It can be no other way. It has to be unique. So don't worry if you haven't experienced the same kinds of things, if you wouldn't describe things in the same way. That doesn't mean that you don't have your own understanding, which is perfect for you. Because however you understand it is perfect for you in this moment. All right, so let's dive in. So I'm going to start by quickly telling my story, and then I'm going to share some concluding insights. So I had a really intense breakup, followed by a Kundalini awakening, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. And in this Kundalini awakening, there was a really big heart opening where I felt waves of orgasmic bliss that lasted for weeks and weeks at a time, sort of off and on. And then my other energy centers became more active, throat, third eye, crown kind of idea. And I thought I made it. I thought, wow, I'm enlightened. Because all of a sudden I seemed to have these mystical powers, right? And the world was shimmering and the air tasted like honey. So I thought, wow, like if anything is enlightenment, this has to be it, right? Boy, was I mistaken. So then what happened was, as the energy moved, it released all of the unconscious baggage that I was holding on to. So all of the subconscious programming, all of the traumatic conditioning, well, I shouldn't say all, but a lot. And as all that came to the surface, the bliss seemed to diminish. And so in seeking to avoid those painful things that were coming up, I was trying to obtain the bliss because I thought I lost my enlightenment and I had to get it back somehow. And in this seeking process, in this spiritual seeking process, I encountered Neo-Advaita Vedanta, or non-dual inquiry, on YouTube. And I was having these really intense non-dual glimpses where I was realizing, quote unquote, was realizing that everything just is exactly as it is. And everything is just happening exactly the way it's happening, or seems to be happening. There is no author of it, in other words. There's no person who is the author of it. There's no time, in fact. There's only the ineffable, infinite moment, and we can't even call it a moment, because that would just be a name, a word. But this isness is everything and nothing. It's all. So it doesn't have a single name. It has infinite names, and even it, the word it, doesn't capture it. We can't speak of it because it is just a word too. It is an expression of it, so to speak. So anyway, this clarity began to come online, but I was still struggling with it because I was wondering about how the clarity relates to the Kundalini awakening and the blissful states, so to speak, and the mystical visions and whatnot. But the thing is, my seeking had ended. It ended with the clarity. It seems paradoxical to say, but I no longer felt the need to feel anything or to be any specific kind of way. So this desire to understand the relationship between clarity and the Kundalini became more of a curiosity that this character has, and less of a need for identity, for safety, for security. And just as I thought that I finally had found what I was looking for, which is this peace, this infinite peace that's always here, I had an encounter that I can only describe as theistic, where actually this encounter occurred in the context of a Christian deliverance ceremony. And what happened was I saw or experienced that there were many entities inside of me in my field that were tamping down my energy, so to speak. And these entities began leaving me, and I actually was transported in my experience to kind of a hell realm and then to a heaven realm. And I started to receive messages from what we might describe as God or the divine. Messages between this character called Woodley and the divine, a godhead, if you will. And when this happened, I was super confused because I thought that there was a kind of separation consciousness happening again, where there was me and the divine, and somehow that I'd lost the clarity that I had. And this is when I left YouTube for this past year. I left because I had this experience earlier in the year and I wasn't sure what to make of it. But what I realized in communion with God, with the Godhead, is that although God is the infinite, ineffable it that we can't describe, God can appear, doesn't have to, as the God that we speak to, as the God you hear about in different contexts, just in the same way that these bodies and these worlds appear. So the infinite expresses as these humans talking to other humans, so to speak, and can also express as these humans talking to God, so to speak. So it's as if the dream of life can contain anything. Anything can happen. Heaven can happen, hell can happen, demons can happen, angels can happen. There are angels too, you could say, or that can be an experience that one can have. And communion with God can happen. And so, too, can energetic mastery happen. It's all what is appearing as it is. There is no real contradiction. There's only an apparent contradiction. So this is how I've come to integrate the three threads of my spiritual process, you could say. Right now, I'm in a process of re-embodying. And what do I mean by that? I mean integrating all three of these threads into a functional identity. Because when the non-dual clarity came, you could say, the Woodley identity dissolved, or it didn't dissolve, but it was seen through, and it lost its chutzpah, it lost its momentum. So I went through a floaty period where I wasn't, quote unquote, doing anything productive. I was just sort of chilling, enjoying whatever seemed to be happening. But well, and in that moment, literally, I couldn't really feel my body's weight. And emotions would come and go, but they weren't very strong. And now what's happening is I'm feeling my body's weight more and more, and a new functional identity is arising, which there's no attachment to, but it is nevertheless functional for a purpose. And it's being guided by this divine communion, you could say, or the divine flow, which is just like the authentic, heart-centered expression that the infinite seems to have. So I'm reintegrating into my body, so to speak. I'm learning to use it in this post, let's say, non-dual phase. And I'm learning to use it for a purpose, which is ultimately to point others to clarity, to divine communion. And energetic mastery is starting to occur as well, because energy is a tool, just like speaking is a tool. Speaking is energy, in fact. Energy is a tool which can be employed to create, And to clarify, so I'm here to help you on your journey. That's why I came to Earth. And I'm going to do that through speaking and pointing, through the intellect and through presence. So anyway, guys, I know that was a lot, but if you are watching this video, it means that you're supposed to be here, and because you couldn't be anywhere else. There's no one to be anywhere else, but also the you who appears here, right? So I hope you got something out of this, and you can look forward to regular postings from me on YouTube again, but focused on addressing the three pillars of three threads of awakening that I just mentioned, and this embodiment process, post non-dual awakening process. So my channel is going to include non-dual pointings, but that is not its primary focus. I'm going to be addressing an audience which is, let's say, post non-dual awakening primarily, but even if you are not post non-dual awakening, although no one really awakens, right? That's important to say. But even though if you're not post non-dual awakening, hopefully my channel can still help you as well with energetic mastery or embodiment, or let's say we can call it trauma work, although that's also not a main focus of mine. But hopefully you get something out of this, and yeah, I'm here for all of you, and feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm gonna have a link pretty soon on my channel where you can book a session with me to talk about anything that you need to talk about related to these subjects. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you guys soon. And oh yeah, and one last thing. I'm also going to be speaking on this channel about ways that we can see traditional spiritual texts through a heart-centered light, through the lens of the clarity that I'm speaking of and the divine communion. Because I think in today's world, which is increasingly globalized, it's important to have a universal language around these things. Anyway, yeah, so just adding that on. I don't know, I'm rambling, but here we are. Much love.